Okay.
Okay. Shavua Tov. For those of you who don't know me by now, shame on you. My name is Robby Berman. I am not a rabbi, I am not a physician, but for the past 17 years I have been an activist in organ donation, thinking about the issue, writing about the issue from different perspectives. And this evening I would like to facilitate an audience debate amongst you. I would like to make this discussion about you and not about me. Because who cares about my thoughts and my ideas? I want to know about your thoughts and your ideas. So I ask you, do you want to have fun or do you want to be Swiss?
Fun.
I say we have fun. So what I want to do is make a suggestion that we do what they did in Rome. In the Senate in Rome, in the Forum, when people would debate a point, it's fascinating. I read about this, I was fascinated by it. When a senator would get up in the Forum in Rome and make a point, if people agreed with him, they would stand up and they would sit behind him to show their support, their physical support, and also people could get a sense which way the debate was going, if more people were being swayed this way or that way. So I want to make a suggestion tonight. I'm going to mention the topic. I think you all know what the topic is. The topic is paying poor people for their kidneys. Is it moral or immoral? Okay? And I think pretty much everyone here has a feeling in their gut before we even begin the conversation, before we even begin to explore what the deeper issues are, people in their gut have a feeling that either they're for that type of behavior or against that type of behavior. So what I want to do is I want to split the room into three sections. This section here will be those people who are sitting right at the get-go who feel that it's okay to allow poor people to sell their kidneys and for wealthy people to buy the kidneys. The middle section will be those people who feel that they're not really sure how they feel about it. And this will be those people who are very much against selling kidneys. And once we divide the room into these three parts, as the conversation, as the debate, as people start to yell at each other and throw chairs at each other and scream at each other, as you Swiss people are known to do, when one person makes a convincing argument, you're going to see people stand up and switch their seats. And that's what I hope. I've never done this in Switzerland. I don't know if it's going to work. But I'm hoping people will be brave enough to get up and say, you know what, that guy made a good point. Because of that point, I'm going to switch my seat. So I ask everyone now to stand up. Everyone, please stand up. Okay. Those people right now who just run their kishkas, which, by the way, I never got the kishka in the chok. You promised me the kishka, I never got it. Don't think I forget. You have it for me? Okay. For those people in their kishkas who feel that selling kidneys, allowing poor people to sell their kidneys to wealthy people is something wrong about that, please come sit on this side. Oh, no. That side. So come sit on that side. Those people who feel it's okay, stay on that side. Come on, there's got to be some movement here. There's no way. Eitan, Mario, Miriam. Okay. Now, I'm just curious, does anyone here, raise your hand if you think you know what my opinion is about the issue. Raise your hand if you think I know. If you think you know. Really? Only... Okay. 5, 6 people. Interesting. Okay. Usually people... raise your hand if you think you know my opinion about brain death. If you think I think that brain death is halachic death.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, I try to pretend that I'm objective and I don't give. It doesn't really come off like that. Okay. So let's begin. I think first we need to explore what it is that we are talking about. We're talking about the fact that thousands upon thousands of people die every year because they don't have enough organs to go around. And there are wealthy people. A man called me up in America and he wanted to buy this is like 2 months ago, he wants to buy my kidney from me for $1 million. Yeah, he's a billionaire, he has the money, he wants to buy for $1 million. Oh, my kidney. Yeah, so it's like, what are you doing here? Sell the kidney, take the money.
That's an option.
Right. Okay, so so you guys who are against, tell us why you're against. Share with us. What are your thoughts?
Health should not be dependent on wealth.
Health should not be dependent on wealth. So can you further explore where is the problem? Whose health is dependent on wealth?
I think people should not be under pressure to sell their body pieces because they need money. Because this creates business, which is...
That's the opposite. That's wealth should not be dependent on health.
Both sides.
On both sides.
On both sides.
Wealthy people shouldn't be having better access to healthcare, which they do.
Wealthy people should not have better access to healthcare. What do you guys say? They do, right?
Yeah, but there's a difference
to a certain
between
extent.
can you have an operation, can you see a private doctor and have a private room, to can I survive and buy a kidney that someone else would have to save?
Different
In the third...
But that's maybe in Switzerland, but like in America, wealthy people for sure have the upper hand. It's not, can I afford this? It's poor people who are not having any health care at all. They can't afford medication, they can't afford any operation. It is already like that.
So what do you say to that? It already exists.
They're just saying that this is on a whole other level.
Like some people
So
buying.
They're saying it's a whole other level. They're saying like that's not acceptable, but this is like taking it to the nth degree. So it's not a different in nature. It's a different in degree.
But that's like that you have. That's a fault of the medical system or the health system. Saying that you can buy an organ is putting someone who is one of these people who doesn't have money, that you're taking advantage of them and their poverty.
Okay, so let me stop for a second and make a comment, an observation. This is an issue that people feel very strongly about. So I want to make two overarching comments. Number one, strong feelings do not make for strong arguments. Just because someone feels strongly about something doesn't mean that it's true or not true. Just it's irrelevant. There could be something underlying those feelings, but it's not an argument. Second, most people, when discussing the issue, are guilty of the rubber duck phenomena. If you ever play rubber ducks with Yishai or with the grandchildren, when you're in the bathtub and there's a lot of bubbles and there's a rubber duck, and the kid punches down the rubber duck, what happens to the rubber duck? It goes under the water and it pops up somewhere else. And then you hit the rubber duck down, it pops up somewhere else. So what I find is there are so many issues. I've identified 12 issues, 12 objections that people have to this issue. And what happens is people conflate them, people conjoin them, and people fail to be able to focus on one of them. And then when someone challenges that person on that one, then they pop up and then the rubber duck pops up and they say, well, what about that? So what I want to do is, when you bring up points, and the points you're bringing up are very good points, let's try to focus like a laser beam and not conflate that point with another point and see if we can nail it down and come to a conclusion that was or was not convincing. So let's start again. So we were talking about here one of nature. We said that people should not be... they should not have health care available to them just based on their money. So we're assuming, wealthy people can buy the kidneys and poor people can't. And
but the best example is your phone call from this billionaire.
Yes.
It's disgusting, I think.
Okay, why?
Because he tries to have a kidney from a
good-looking.
Yeah.
Obviously
Obviously, yes, exactly. And because he has a lot of money, he can do whatever he wants.
And you find that disgusting?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, this
Not
is
interesting, fascinating. You find it disgusting. A man's life is on the table, is on the line. He might die because he won't get a kidney. And because he has a lot of money and he can afford to pay for it, you find that disgusting.
When he does it on a private way. If
What do you
he's
mean, a
going
private
to
way?
a hospital, I didn't know if he's ill or he needs for somebody else.
No, for himself.
But he's in the hospital and then he has to.
He has to wait in line.
Huh?
But he has to wait in line.
That's the problem. Yeah.
He has to wait in line. Fascinating. Do you know that the head of the Mossad, Meir Dagan, was a former head of the Mossad? Do you know what happened to him? Anyone know what happened to Meir Dagan? Meir Dagan, former head of the Mossad, needed a liver transplant. So he flew to Belarusia, where he has connections, and he got himself a liver. He used his connection. He didn't wait in line. And I thought was disgusting, because he was an Israeli official in the government, the very high level of the government. He was the head of the Mossad, and he used his connections to jump the line in Belarusia to get a liver when he should. I think he should wait in line. But a person who has money, we're now discussing
I
whether.
confess that's a big problem. If you need your health, you give every grosch for it. But on the other side, it's very difficult.
But let's try to focus on this issue. Are you on this point about wealth buying healthcare? Are you on this point, or are you going to rubber duck me? Don't rubber duck me.
I think it's very important. I want to know if you're talking buying from a living person or you have a dead person and you buy the organ.
That's a great question. We'll talk about that at the very end. Now we're talking about living, buying from a living person. Yeah.
We have a general problem. Are we allowed to sell anything from our body? Because we have now a double problem. Are we allowed to sell anything? And then we are taking advantage of the power people.
But the question is,
the
question is it ethical or a religious question?
Right, that's the point. So let me just set the terms here of this conversation, of this discussion, of this debate. Right, we have halacha, which I'm not really interested in halacha, even though that's ironic that I run the halachic organ donor study. The reason why I'm not interested in halacha is because if you actually have a question, a moral question, and all you do is like a robot go to the Shulchan Aruch and pull off a book and loot the answer, we can all wrap up and go home today, and we don't really need to discuss this, because you're just going to follow it like a robot. So I'll tell you what different halachic opinions say afterwards. There is a halachic debate about it, so you get both sides. So let's take halacha out of it. There's not a halachic discussion.
Let's assume it's allowed.
No, let's assume we don't know what halacha says. That's the best. We don't assume we don't know what halacha says. Ethics basically is what ethical codes are, what society has established. Society has established clearly that it is not permissible, it is unethical to buy kidneys from poor people. That's why almost every single country in the world prohibits it. There is one country in the world that allows it. I won't tell you what that country is. I won't tell you the name of that country until the end of the debate, because I don't want to influence you. So I'm talking about morality. Morality is that innate sense of whether you think it's right or wrong coming from your gut. Okay? Yes?
You didn't say anything about how much it jeopardizes a person's health if he gives a kidney. Because
yes, that's a great question, Miriam. That is the baseline of really the whole conversation. But that, by the way, can I hold it for 1 second, because it's very important. I think we should have started with that. Well, we didn't start with that. We started with whether or not wealthy people should be allowed. So I don't want to rubber duck here.
No,
let's start with
but it's connected to that.
Why?
Because then it isn't exploitation. You're saying I'm using the poor person who has no choice. He's going to jeopardize this billionaire. Why doesn't he ask his wife or his son? But no, he's going to somebody who is going to jeopardize his or her health because she has to. And that's an ethical problem.
Okay, so let's discuss so first we'll discuss the health risk, and then we'll go back to this issue about should wealthy people have a right to buy things that poor people can't for their health. So let's talk about the health. What are the health issues concerning selling your kidney? What are the health risks? Anyone know what they are?
Operation has a risk. Sure.
Say again?
Any operation has a risk.
So there's the risk of the operation. And what else is there a risk of?
Functionality.
Of living what?
If
you're living with one kidney. So those are the two risks. So does anyone know what the risks are, what the mortality rate is when you sell or donate a kidney?
No.
What percentage of people die donating a kidney?
Less than 5%.
It's 0.03%. That means 3 in 10,000 people die giving their kidney, which means that you have a greater risk dying during childbirth. You have a greater risk dying during a tummy tuck surgery than you do donating your kidney.
But that's also calculating what's the risk of them dying younger because they're going to die of kidney failure and they have only one.
Well, we haven't discussed that. Right now I'm just discussing the... I know, but we haven't got to that yet. Let's go para.
That's the
Don't jump.
operation.
Para. Let's slaughter one cow at a time. So the first cow that was slaughtering is the operation. The operation itself, the mortality is 0.03%. That's considered very, very low. So low that doctors encourage people to donate their kidneys altruistically. Right? Getting money for your kidney doesn't increase the risk of the surgery itself. That has no impact. Living with one kidney. What is the medical risk of living with one kidney? How long do people live with one kidney? So I'll tell you an interesting fact. Let's see who has read Kahneman and Tversky, Behavioral Economics. There's an interesting fact. People who donate their kidney live a longer life than people who don't donate their kidney. Why? How can you explain that? That's a fact. How can you explain that? Who has a critical thinking cup? God has given him a blessing because he's donated his kidney. It's a schus l'arichus yomim, and now you have a mitzvah and you got more life. And no, what is it? Yes, it's called selection bias. Those people that were allowed to donate their kidney were actually above average in health, and therefore they were going to live a longer life anyway. Right. The only risk that you can think of is if you get kidney cancer on that remaining kidney, then you need another kidney. If you get into a car accident because you're driving with people who don't drive well, He wasn't to blame. He wasn't to blame. A truck hit us. He wasn't to blame. So if you get hit in that kidney, you won't have a kidney. Some people think, oh, what happens if your kidneys fail? Aren't you now at more of a risk? And the answer is no, because when your kidneys fail, when you have kidney disease always attacks both kidneys. Yeah. So it's not the fact that you had two kidneys wouldn't help you. Both your kidneys will be affected. The way it would have helped you is that if you had two kidneys, your capacity for your kidney function would have been higher. So you wouldn't have to go on dialysis till later on. If you have only one kidney and the kidney disease is affecting it, so you have to go on dialysis earlier. So there is some impacts. But how many people have you heard of, got into a car accident and lost their kidney? I mean, it's a very rare occurrence.
I also assume that they are living more consciousness, that they have one kidney, so they're more careful.
What
could be wrong.
Right, and eat better, and they exercise better, right? It's selection bias. It's not some bracha that they donate a kidney, and if I sell my kidney for $1 million, God's not going to give me a bracha. So you're a greedy Jew. I'm not going to give you extra life. Okay, so we've dealt with the medical risk. Is Miriam satisfied? Okay. All right, now we go to the question. Yes.
We allow surrogacy, which also has medical risks, but that's totally fine and no one debates that whatsoever, unless we're talking about, again, paying women in India or whatever, but it's still allowed.
Well, not in every country. Actually, here in Switzerland, it's forbidden that they don't allow women to sell their kidneys, but you're right. There are women who have died getting stimulated for their ovaries to produce eggs, and they were hyperstimulated, and it's very, very rare, but it happens. Okay, so let's go back, because again, I don't want to rubber duck here. Let's just go. Let's put a nail. Let's put this to bed. Is it okay for wealthy people to afford to do? Well, let me start this way. Forget about whether it's moral or not moral. Does society allow for wealthy people today to gain access to health care that poor people do not have? Yes or no? Yes.
Sure. Yes.
So we allow it. So if you want to now go wear a holier than thou hat and say, well, we allow it for everything else, but for this we refuse to allow it, then you're not being fair. Now, I will share with you that the proposal that people put forth is that, okay, we hear that, we understand that concern, so therefore what we'll do is we'll say that it won't be a free market, it'll be a quasi-free market. Only the government will be allowed to buy the kidney from the poor person, and the government distributes the kidney on a fair basis, whoever needs it. So you could buy it from a poor person and give it to a poor person, as the government will decide. And that will address, I think, your issue. Is that?
So who's buying it? The government?
The government will buy it and then give it to whoever needs it the most, so it could be poor people. So you want to get up and go to the other side, or go to the middle, or want to stay? You want to stay? Was that your only issue? You have other issues?
No.
You have other issues?
I'm not sure. I need to think. Okay, fine, I'm moving.
Okay, now you can still move to the center if you're not sure. You can move to the center.
I would totally oppose to that. If the government buys, that would mean government gives only social welfare money when you first give your wealth one kidney. So somehow it's part of your wealth when you have no money, you have to give a kidney. That would the government then force you to do. And that, from my perspective, would be absolutely awful.
But do you hear what this gentleman said? If I understood you correctly, I think what you're saying is that once you say it's okay for people to sell their kidney, then if a person's in debt, the judge will come along and say, okay, you have a kidney, I force you to sell your kidney, you get out of debt.
That's not necessarily true. I mean, you can block that. I mean, that's a technical legal issue which you can say it's not
Like
going
you
to
block corruption in South America. Come on. That's inviting.
No, but he's making a good point, and that is...
yeah, but if the government
you're-
buys kidney, that's what, the government has not to pay me money because I cannot survive otherwise. I first have to give my kidney before they give me money. That would be the reaction of the government.
Right, right. But I think that's a I want to make a distinction between like a moral issue and a practical. That's a practical issue. Even if we want to go down that route and say that that's problematic, we can say, okay, let's not allow that to happen. But I hear that as a valid question, and I don't actually know how I feel about it. But it is a valid question. I mean, once you say that it's moral for poor people to sell their kidney, and a poor person borrows $1 million from the bank and doesn't pay it back, you go to court and say, okay, well, he has an asset on him that's worth $1 million in the free market. Let me force him to sell his kidney.
You assume that an asset is an asset, that all assets are the same way. And as you said, it's a practical issue. You could say anything belonging to your body is not technically an asset, and you cannot be forfeited of an organ.
No, but you're saying it is an asset. You're allowing a poor person to sell their kidney.
I am, but I'm saying it's not technically necessary that in case you go bankrupt or something, you'll be forced to sell a kidney.
What this gentleman is
you can
saying is
circumvent that.
We could, but the question is why. If you're saying it's moral and you're saying it's an asset,
because you're not valuing all assets in the same way.
But you are. If you're saying that you can sell your kidney, you're saying the kidney is mine. I have a right to do what I want with it. It's an asset. If I want the money out of greed, I can take it out. Well, if I want it out of greed and it's moral to take it out of greed, why wouldn't it be moral for me to pay back a loan? I borrowed a loan for $1 million.
Can you force somebody?
Or forced? That's a big
What was that?
Is it voluntary or forced? That's a big difference.
Well, I'm saying once we say it's moral that allow people to do it, then what could you argue in court? Why the court shouldn't require a person to sell their kidney?
Because it's not voluntary anymore.
Right. Exactly. You can sell your organ if you want to, but you cannot be forced to it. It's a sort of a prostitution argument. In the sense that you could say, you don't have any money, the people send you for a job, or you have to go get a job because welfare won't pay you otherwise. Can you be forced to go into prostitution?
I think it's an argument to be made. If prostitution was legal in the country, I think it's an argument to be made. Yes.
We also don't send people into slavery anymore if they can't pay the debt, so it's not a problem.
No, it's
Just
different.
to prison.
Well, that's different because here we're trying to say whether or not it's moral or not to sell your kidney. We're not saying no one would say it's moral to sell for someone to sell themselves into slavery.
It's the same thing.
No, but
freedom is an asset.
You
Your freedom is an
extrapolate
asset. Your
between a
work is an
voluntary
asset.
gift and a forced gift. That's a big difference. Yeah.
I like what you said. Freedom is an asset. See, I'm learning from you guys more than you're learning from me. Freedom is an asset, and why shouldn't you be able to sell your freedom? You're saying you wouldn't. You're saying you wouldn't allow people to sell their freedom, and you wouldn't force people to sell their freedom. Wouldn't force people to sell their kidneys. Okay. Yes.
Isn't it a question where the request is coming from? I mean, it's a difference if the request is coming from the wealthy people who want to take something which can harm another person, or when the poor person says, I'm willing to give my kidney and I have money and I can give my children a good education and so on, and then you have at the end a win-win situation. But this is only when the request comes from the side of the poor person, who has to give much more than money.
But that happens in South America.
I think this is less disgusting if not the wealthy people come and say, we are wealthy, magia lano, that we can live and that we can live longer and so on. That's something else than a poor person who says, I know the risks, I want to give my kidney because then our whole family has a good life and you can live longer, and then it's a win-win situation in this case.
I would see it from another side. I think that people willing to donate somehow, for some reason, are in desperate situation. So either they need the money to survive or whatever, and so it helps them. I think from that point of view, as long there is no there are no criminal issues involved, I think it's
What happens
it's
if
fine.
they're so desperate that they'll accept $2,000 for a kidney, whereas in another country it would be worth 50. And they're so desperate that they'll take it because $2,000 to them. Like, I mean, maybe in some countries you can get far with $2,000, but here.
Well, what do you think about that? I mean, there are some countries now where people do jobs for a lot less money than we do here because they have a lower standard of living, and that's what they. I mean, that's fact of life is
But
different.
then there's like international buying of organs.
That's the market.
Well, then ITSA comes in and makes a market for it.
That's my argument. The moment you argue like this, if you enter into the market, that's a phenomenon that you have to take into the equation.
There's always the arbitrage.
Market says we'll always have demand and supply.
And there's always an arbitrage. I mean, what are you going to say that nurses everywhere in the world have to get exactly 50,000 Swiss franc and no one can get more or less for that? Is that different communities have different standards of living at different pays, and what's worth more to you is worth. Some people live in $8 a day. Some people live in $1 a day.
By the way, the money laundering and all this banking problems is out of this problem of dealing with kidneys and like that. This was a big thing.
Okay.
And the direction is South America. And Thailand.
I also have another question.
I
Can we
think
give?
this gentleman had his hand up first.
So I just want to know if I'm allowed to give it for free, why shouldn't I be allowed to sell it?
Oh, that's a great question. If he's allowed to give something for free, because that has to do with the nature. See, a lot of people, they say, oh, well, selling your kidney is like prostitution. And selling your kidney is like selling drugs. You think people should have the right to sell drugs, people have the right to sell their body, prostitution. And the difference is that when you do it for free, people say it's a mitzvah. No one says if a prostitute comes to the what's this called? The Wollishofen. If a prostitute came to Wollishofen on Mondays and Thursdays to catch people who came for laning in the morning, it says she's giving out freebies right after laning, but it's for free. No one would say this is a positive thing. Not for her, not for her, not for not for her, and not for the community, right? We know for free. So if you take money out of the equation, you can see that the nature, the essence of what's being offered is noten tam lefgam. There's something off-putting about what's in nature. But here, doing for free, as this gentleman pointed out, for free to donate your kidney, everyone says that's a gevalta mitzvah.
Am I allowed to be compensated loss of work, pain, all of these things? Or is that also immoral?
Well, no, every country allows for compensation for
It's just
loss of
semantic.
time and pain and all that stuff, right?
So it's the same.
But now the question is, but are you allowed? Like in America, they don't allow women to sell their eggs. What they do is they give them $8,000 for the time that was involved in selling their eggs, which is a total game. It's a total game. It's just awful.
It's like the cousin doesn't get
Right. They're not getting paid. Right, the preparation. Right.
But isn't the main
And also the rabbis.
Yeah.
But when you hear the Dvar Torah, you don't think the rabbi's really prepared. So I don't know how he's getting paid money. Is that going on YouTube?
Isn't the main question what is one allowed to do with his body? Like if somebody would take drugs, he is able to take drugs. If he would die, so he dies. If he takes alcohol, if he smokes, so nobody will tell him what. Of course, you're right. You read that when you smoke, you could die, but
Right.
nevertheless, he can do what he wants. If a million package, he smokes a million package. So where's the difference now in selling a part of the body or getting the body killed through other things? Nobody would tell him what to do. How come here, all of a sudden, we are the police?
So I think there is an argument to be made for that. But what we're saying here is, even if you don't want to make that argument that people have the right to do what they want to do with their body, like prostitution or drugs, the difference is that on this issue of giving your kidney, everyone agrees that's a mitzvah. That's a good thing to do without money. Question is, why is being given money all of a sudden turn a good deed into a bad deed? Well, this is the group here that should ask. You guys are against it. Does anyone here feel that the actual getting money for the deed? Yeah.
It's a market question. That's why you put it in jeopardy the moment you open a market for it. That's the whole thing. That's a difference between volunteering it, giving it free, or taking money for it. That's the line that you cross.
Robby, sorry. But the market is there. The market's there anyway. So either you regulate it or you just allow it to happen under the table.
We are
So
not talking before
it's the
that.
same question for prostitution, it's the same
correct,
question
but
for
we are
drugs.
talking the
It's,
moral question. You're absolutely correct. We know that. But he asked the question, what's the difference between this and that? He didn't say we're creating it. You give, the moment you start that, you go into the market field. The market field is totally different from what I volunteer to give it, I want to be a tzaddik, I want to need it for that. It's you're talking different.
But you're saying once it becomes part of a market, there's something inherently
it
immoral?
changes everything.
I know it changes, but are you saying it changes and makes it immoral?
It can be immoral.
That's
but
why
does it
I'm
make it
sitting
immoral?
here.
So explain. So why? Do
No,
you think,
that's what I said.
No, so
Because
why do you think it's immoral when markets come into play?
Help me.
I think you shouldn't deal with your body parts.
That's it.
So what?
You shouldn't deal with your body parts.
Why?
Because it's immoral.
Okay, so are you then against men selling sperm, women selling hair, women selling eggs?
No, it's
people
a
selling
one goal.
blood?
It's a one goal.
It's a big difference.
What's the difference?
I can reproduct it.
Okay, so now you're rubber ducking me. Let me tell you why you're rubber ducking me. Whether or not you can commodify the human body, we see is already done. Men are allowed to sell sperm. Women, you're allowed to sell your hair. You can sell your eggs. We
But
don't
it
call it
doesn't
selling.
hurt anybody.
Wait a second. So now you're rubber ducking me because now you're talking about risk. You're talking about hurting. You're talking about it doesn't reproduce. That's a different issue.
And I don't
That
need
goes back.
operation.
That goes back to the health issue. Is there a problem with me selling a kidney that doesn't regrow? Well, we just said before that the risk is so low, they encourage people to do it for free.
No.
So don't rubber duck. One issue, one opposition, one objection was you're commodifying the human body, and I said society already allows you to commodify the human body. And then you said, oh, but that stuff reproduces itself, which goes to the issue of health.
Let me be more precisely. I'm also not in favor of dealing with sperm. But there's a different attitude and it should not be regulated. By the way, it is a kind of regulated. But you cannot compare, even if you operate a kidney, which is not dangerous and the percentage of risk is below 1%, it is an operation. You have to distinguish if you operate a guy or if he contributes sperm.
But by you saying operation, you're already referring to the fact that maybe there's a health risk, and we already established health is not an issue here. So you're rubber ducking. You're going from commodification to health. That's a few. They always
It's a combination.
They're not connected. But the fact that you're first of all, eggs do not reproduce. So woman is born with a certain amount of eggs. They don't reproduce eggs. You have a certain amount
Also
of
with a
eggs.
certain amount of sperm.
Not true. Maybe you.
Find the right guy.
Yes.
Now I want to be provocative.
I'm not a provocative guy. I'm a very low key. I don't like.
Why did we speak about kidneys for $1 million? I have another proposal. Lead the discussion based on heart donation or selling for $100 million. What is the answer of the people? Because the situation is absolutely different from kidneys. Here it's life and death. So what is the answer?
I think the answer that they would give is that when you sell your heart, you're killing yourself. So
Okay.
that's the difference.
Yes, and you
they
sell something. You sell something to have the wealth of your 10 children, your wife, and so on and so forth, because you have no dollars in your pocket.
Right.
So what?
So the argument I think this other side would make is that we want to find something, activity that is moral, that doesn't actually hurt a person. And selling your heart kills you. Well, this is the argument. This is what this side, I believe, would be saying. It would be killing yourself, and therefore we wouldn't allow you to sell your heart. We wouldn't allow you to sell your right arm because you're hurting yourself. You're limiting yourself. But a kidney has absolutely no impact on your life.
This is what you say.
This is what the doctors say. That's why they let you do it for free. That's why they let you do it for free.
Prove it. No, it's difficult to prove it.
What? We did prove it. We did prove it. I gave you statistics.
You give your kidney, and 10 years later, the second kidney, there's no more function.
Okay, so stop. So don't let people just give their kidney for free then.
Okay, there is a statistic that it's not the case.
Don't let people give their kidney for free then.
That's just bad luck if your second kidney, something happens to your second kidney, if you have an accident or whatever. It's not because Jackie.
He's not. He's in his.
You're not listening.
No.
It's bad luck if your second kidney goes out. What Robby's saying is it's not likely that your second kidney, something's going to happen to your second kidney that is going to put you at. Yes, you never know. It's bad luck. If you have an accident or you get injured or you have cancer of your kidney, then it's bad luck. You wouldn't want to know that.
I have a question for this group. Are you guys just lazy, or has nothing that's been said moved you at all? You're not going in any direction. No one's moving at all. Nothing? You're still undecided? No issue has touched your concerns? Nothing? Okay, yes.
Actually, he gave me the idea, but he is too shy to know. Instead of kidney, consider blood. You're allowed to give blood, okay? If somebody tells you, I'll give you $1 million if you give me 3 liters of blood, you can, 3 liters good quantity, but you can retrieve, but it's thicker of blood. So that's another case of another organ that people give for free, and you might consider a kind of black market for blood.
Which happens.
So what's your argument?
Would they allow me to sell my blood?
Yeah.
What's the question?
Can I sell my blood? Should they have a problem with that?
So he's asking you guys whether you think it's okay to sell blood. But selling blood, by the way, was legal in America for many years, and it was just because of a practical concern. They stopped it, not because of a moral concern.
We're mixing apples and bananas. We're talking about a kidney that is gone, and you're talking about blood that's been reproduced. Am I getting it?
No, but now you're rubber ducking. Once you go down the line where you talk about, but this reproduces itself, you're implying that there's some difference between an organ that reproduces and doesn't reproduce. The only difference is that something that doesn't reproduce itself might have a permanent negative impact on you. And we just said that donating a kidney doesn't, and that's why they allow people to freely give their kidney. Yes?
I would assume that if selling kidney is allowed, then you go to the people who sell it for less money, and that will be the drug addicts in the age of 15, 20. They need more drugs, and they give a kidney, and that helps them for a few weeks, and then it's over.
So that's not they're not a good donor.
When you legalize it, then you have proper regulation and proper oversight, and you do proper testing to see who the donor is. I think what we should do is, if possible, Yaakov, do you have any skis that we can bring in here? Because I think if we had skis, there'd be more movement. I think it's the fact that people have to actually walk on terra firma that they're not moving, but...
Isn't it a difference if there is like some single cases where you have to legalize and you have to look that everything goes in order versus a social acceptance of selling a body part? I mean, if all of a sudden you have a social acceptance that it's okay to give a kidney if you're poor, it's something else, then if here or there, it really happens in a good way, even.
What are your thoughts? Can you repeat what you said for me?
In English.
Yes.
I said, I think, or I ask, if it's not a difference, if all of a sudden there is a social acceptance that poor people can sell their kidney, wealthy people can buy kidneys, like it is accepted that wealthy people have more jewelry than poor people, and it's like clear, and we don't have a problem with that. And I think this is disgusting if it would be like a social acceptance, but if it's in some single cases, it could be, as I said before, a win-win situation. That we have to distinguish.
But a single case, I mean, in any event, anyone who needs to is reduced to having to sell it in order to support their family because they're in dire straits, then you're taking advantage of that person's situation.
Taking advantage. Let's talk about taking advantage. That's a good point. But I want to
even if he's doing it willingly.
But before we get to the taking advantage, I just want to say I think we had discussed this before that selling.
No, she's changing side.
That we're talking about a situation where, first of all, society already allows for wealthy people to have access to health care that poor people don't have. And number two, what's the proposal that's being put forth is for the government to buy the kidneys, not wealthy people. So the government gets the kidneys and gives it to whoever needs it, including to poor people. So that whole issue is really sidestepped. But someone here now mentioned about, what did you say? About a person being...
Taking advantage.
Taking advantage. You think the poor person is being taken advantage, being exploited? This group here, I mean, you guys are, you do? Okay, share with me. Get it off your chest. Why do you think he's being exploited? What does it mean? Can someone define exploitation?
I think, again, the moment somebody has...
What does it mean to be exploited?
That you put in a position...
To gain from someone's misery. So, if I invested money in a business scheme by Itzhak, and Itzhak, and the money went down the tubes, I lost all my money, and now I'm really in dire straits. I got to buy a ticket back to Israel, and so I want to sell Mary Moshe's my sweater, and I love this sweater. I really like this sweater. Are you exploited? And you're not interested in this sweater. You're not going to pay me what I pay for the sweater. Let's say 100 Swiss franc. You're going to give me, if you do me a favor, you'll give me 20 Swiss franc, but I'll take it. Have you exploited me?
In a way, yes.
But still, she's not helping me. I want to get back to Switzerland. I want to Israel.
But still, your example is very bad because you can't compare your sweater
Yeah.
with a kidney. It's true if you go ahead like that.
Now you're doing that.
Because I want to hear you.
Right?
I'm doing how?
Yeah, because you're going... I think it's not a good comparison.
No.
Your sweater does not compare to my kidney. Never. I'm sorry.
Even if your sweater is highly valued, you can't compare.
We're trying to understand, what does it mean to exploit someone? Someone give me an example. What does it mean? Give me an example where you...
A taxi driver, when it's raining and he charges you through that car in Israel, the same question, but you still cannot compare it. And I have it all the time.
He's a taxi driver.
Can we divide the question to two parts? Is one allowed to sell his part of the bodies? One thing. The other question is, if somebody may ask and buy a part of a body from somebody else. It's not always the same. It could be that we would decide selling a part of a body, no way.
Right.
But trying to buy, why not?
Right. Let me, without getting too deep into the concept of exploitation, would this satisfy this group here if I would say that if we made sure that every person who sold his kidney got $1 million, would you consider the poor person to be exploited then?
No. It depends. If,
on what?
If otherwise the government would pay all his needs, but now the government forces him to first give the kidney and take this 1 million, and only when this 1 million is spent, the government jumps in, then it's exploitation.
It can be a direct deal between two people, the guy who needs the kidney and the guy who wants to give the kidney. It can be, it has to be surveyed, and they have to be controlled.
I want to focus, I want to get us to focus on the concept of exploitation. What does it mean to exploit someone?
Yeah.
And can we think of a way where it wouldn't be exploitation? What does it mean to exploit someone?
It means that somebody gets less than what he or she deserves from her own
Who decides what a person deserves for that?
The market.
The market.
Yeah, the market.
So are you exploiting people when you buy, when you know that you have a back-to-back deal and you have a buyer, the American government, the military wants to buy mercury for their weapons, and you know you have that, and you know they're going to pay $5 a metric ton, and you got some guy who's going to sell it to you for $1. Are you exploiting them?
We call that the market.
The market.
What you were doing
But
is
you're
the
not calling it
market.
exploiting.
Again, you're comparing dire strait, as you said, pain.
I'm not in dire strait.
No, wait.
I'm willing to pay I'm willing to sell my kidney for $1 million.
We're talking
I'm not in
about
dire
we're
strait.
talking about the poor lady who has 10 children,
Yeah.
and they want to go to high school, whatever.
Yeah.
And you compare. Let's put you with a lot of money. It's no problem if they want to go to school like that. And the other one, she has to think, should I? You know what? The only way how my children can have the same education like others is if I, what is it? Sell my kidneys, do something that nobody would really do just out of the blue.
No, but people do.
This is
But
exploiting.
people do. But people do out of the blue. People give their kidney out of the blue.
Then we have some do, some don't.
Right.
But again, and that's a market question, right? The moment that market doesn't satisfy the demand, you have the problem exactly as you explained it with the mercury, $5 per ton. What are you talking about? So the moment somebody is in pain or has to actually think of, actually I shouldn't do that, but because I really need it, I have to do it. And we're talking always the same. I'm not talking about selling his car. He's selling part of his body.
Do you know how many people in Israel died this year, construction workers? Anyone have any idea? 2018, how many construction workers died? How many people?
Not as much as in car accidents.
How many people died? 40 people died in 2018. 40 construction workers. Were they wealthy, middle class? They were poor people. Poor people, construction workers. Do you? Is that exploitation? Should we stop all the building in Israel, all the building in Switzerland?
I don't understand.
What?
I don't understand your comparison.
Kesher is for people who need something, often in order because they need it so badly, they're willing to do things that other people wouldn't do.
I'm gonna.
The point is that they need to job
I'm going to put rules on this.
I want to see chairs being thrown. No one's throwing any chairs.
That's
not resolved by markets or by things like this. They are resolved by ethical committees. You have to establish an ethical committee.
I'm not in favor of ethical committees. Who should be on these ethical committees?
Well, you have to decide. That is the only kind of decision that can.
So we're not talking about ethics, we're talking about morality. That's first of all. Second of all, ethical committees are usually the majority of them are physicians. And with all due respect to physicians, and I know you're a physician.
Not only, no.
I not only. I said not only. I said not 100%. I know that. I said, but by and large, they have physicians on them. I know they bring in a social worker and they bring in a priest and a rabbi, but by and large, they have physicians on them. And I don't understand why moral questions are asked of physicians. Physicians could be very good doctors, but it does not mean because they're an expert in transplanting a kidney from one person to another person, they have a finer sense of morality. What we're doing here is trying to uncover what the underlying moral issues are. And right now I want to try to focus on exploitation. What does exploitation mean? And can you actually do something so it's not exploitation? So you're saying if a woman wants to give her kids a good education and she can't afford it, but you're going to give her $1 million, do you think she's being exploited?
No.
Every person who sells something because it's in their best interest to sell something that they own because they want something better. That's what trade is. That's what commerce is. That's what money is. Money is a fungible way of saying, I want that sweater, so I'm going to give you this pair of shoes, but I'm going to use money to interchange it. That's what commerce is.
Why not on a leg? Why not on an arm?
Because now you're rubber ducking a leg, and so I said.
I say you're rubber ducking.
So we said, oh yeah.
It's like when we say if you give of an arm or a leg or your heart or whatever,
you're hurting yourself.
You're damaging yourself.
And we're saying we're not going to let you damage yourself. That's our.
You're taking the basis on a decision because it's generally known that it's not harming if you give the second kidney. I say, how do you know? You were born and given 2 kidneys, you're entitled to keep them both.
My cousin just got discovered she only has 1 kidney. She just discovered it. A lot of people are born only with 1 kidney. They don't live a long normal life. And statistics say that you don't need 2 kidneys. You can live a long normal life with 1 kidney. So you're going back to the medical. You're going back to the medical issue again, and the medical issue we put to bed. We need to put things to bed. We nailed the coffin down. That issue is down. Medical issue, the health issue is not an issue. Don't go back to that issue. Yeah. Wait, someone who hasn't spoken. Someone who hasn't spoken? Here. Yes.
I'm still with the workers. I think it's exploitation if you don't make it enough sure that they all die. Then it's exploitation because the ones who own these companies just don't give enough money to make it's sure enough for the workers not to go down. And then
like in Qatar.
Yeah, that's just illegal. That's not exploitation.
Everyone's going to go to the stadium and doesn't care.
Let me ask you this question. Because I have not succeeded in getting the audience to focus on the deeper principles of exploitation. How about this? How about if we passed a law that said we'll allow people to sell their kidney, but the people can't be poor? They have to be middle class or above.
Should you?
Therefore, the people not being exploited. Do you think I'm poor or I'm being exploited? If someone offered me $1 million and wanted to sell my kidney, am I being exploited?
I'm not comparing you to the
I'm asking you, yes or no. Am I being exploited?
I don't know your situation.
My situation is I'm middle class.
If you have, let's put it this way. For me, if you have doubts whether you should do it or not, and you do it because you're under pressure, then you're being exploited.
Okay, so I'm not under pressure. I think. Yeah.
Since when is exploitation the basis of a Rechtsgeschäft, of a legal arrangement? If I buy your car, do I ask you why do you have to sell your car? Since when is that part of the equation? Either something is illegal, like the workers in Qatar and so on, or it's legal. And if it's legal, I'm not obliged. Nobody's obliging me to ask for a reason.
You know the funniest moment in radio history. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second, ma'am. The funniest moment in American radio history was in, I think it was 1933 or 43. I think it was 43. Benny Goodman. What was his name? Benny Goodman, the famous
musician.
No, a comedian. Jack Benny, famous radio comedian, and he had a skit on the radio. He was known. His personality on the radio skit was he was known to be a very cheap person. He wouldn't spend money on anything. So the skit was he was walking down the street, and some guy comes out from behind the corner, dark at night. I guess it was maybe Zurich. So I got mugged here 2 nights ago. And a guy pulls a gun on Jack Benny, and he says to him, "Give me your money or your life." And there's a pause, a silence there, and the crook says, "I said your money or your life." And Jack Benny says, "I know, I heard you, I'm thinking." I think it's very funny because he has an option. Most people don't think that's an option. And in the courts, as you said, is there ever a legal situation where exploitation does come in? There is. If you can prove to the court that you were forced, you were exploited, you were coerced into agreeing to it, like someone put a gun to your son's head and said, "I'm going to kill your son unless you sign a deed to your car," then the judge can come along and undo that.
Fine, but that's an extreme situation.
Wait, hold on. Let me finish. But that is a different situation because in that situation, first of all, the person is coming along and saying that they were coerced. The poor people who are selling their kidneys are not saying they were coerced. You're coming along high and mighty on your moral horse and saying, "Oh, these poor people are being exploited." Yes, speak to them in India. They don't feel they're being exploited. They want their money. Now, in the black market, it is true that some people get their money. There are people. Hold on a second. Hold on one second. There are people in India who get very little money for their kidney, and it doesn't get them out of poverty, and they have health issues afterwards. So those people are being exploited because they're not getting significant money, right? And they're not getting health care. But when we talk about when we're talking about suggesting a regulated legal market, we're talking about giving people significant money and health care and screening them beforehand and making sure they're not unduly pressured and making sure they have 6 months or a year to think about it. We're putting together a package that would take exploitation out of the picture. I think there is an opportunity for exploitation. I don't think it's de facto anytime someone sells their kidney, that means they were exploited. Poor people have a right to get a job working on a building site and they're not being exploited. Poor people have a right to go build bridges even though they will die. Poor people have a right. Most of the people in America, the 500,000 strong army in America, are all poor people. Who do you think goes to the army in America? Wealthy people? Middle class? You think anyone walking from the 5 towns on Central Avenue who went to Yeshiva High School is joining the American Army? No, it's only poor people. But there you're not saying it's exploitation. Yes.
So just one thing. I think the only reason why I moved was because we discussed saying that it would be regulated and it's the government buying the organs, it's not private people buying it. The only issue that I still have, which is still a big problem for me, that wealthy people in so many areas of life, in education and healthcare and everything, have such higher benefits than poor people. Shouldn't we be spending, rather than spending the money to regulate an area just for people with kids, like let's assume that if you're saying we don't want to exploit anyone, that person who gives a kidney has to receive a significant amount, that we're going to be spending such an amount of money on this one health issue rather than trying to improve healthcare in general. Like, why are we saying that this is the biggest issue and the government needs to look into an issue?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because economically it makes sense. Because economically you wouldn't be doing any harm to anyone. Economically it costs $75,000 to keep a person on dialysis. So it makes sense for an insurance company to say, instead of paying $75,000 a year, let's give a poor person $250,000, get him out of poverty, and then get that guy off dialysis, and I'll have more money in my pocket to pay for other things. So even according to your hashkafa, it would make sense to allow people to sell their kidney. It's now 9:05. I have like a 5-minute wrap-up that I want to do, but I don't know if I should continue or wrap it up now. It's up to you. What do you want to do? You want to continue the throwing the chairs and yelling at each other?
Questions. You're provoking us now for 1 hour, and you're asking us questions. Now the question to you.
Yeah.
In which group you're going to sit?
Well, in my wrap-up, I'll tell you. You'll figure out where I stand on this issue. But I think you can figure where I stand on this issue.
Practically, how much chance I have to stand up today and say I want to sell my kidney? Like, how much matching is that? Very easy? Or
Very easy.
Very
There's
easy.
thousands of people who die every year waiting for kidneys.
And they're easy to match.
Yeah, kidneys are very easy to
How
match.
did the guy that wanted to buy your kidney know that you're a match?
He didn't, but you can do what's called the daisy chain transplant, which means even if I don't match for him, I can give my kidney to someone else, and that person matches because it has someone who gives it to him. But today they have great technology.
Do you still have his
you don't
phone
really
number?
have to match. You don't even need the same blood type. Yeah.
You still have his phone number?
I
Yes.
think, if hypothetically, it's really completely non-problematic to donate kidneys, then it would be time to start promoting people to donate for free. And I think that would be a great solution. Because the problem is if you start legalizing asking money, there's a danger of exploiting people who need a kidney. Because then it's going to be like, oh, okay, you need my kidney, I'm going to give it for $1 million. This guy's offering you $1 million. What if somebody needs one of them, can't pay it $1 million?
So, as to your 2 points that you made, the last point first, what we're talking about is the government buying it, not wealthy people. So it wouldn't be $1 million. It would be 50, 100, 200, whatever it is. The government would set that, and it would be equal for everyone. Everyone would come along, get the same price for their kidney. That's first. Second of all, there is an organization called Matnat Chaim, run by Rabbi Haber in Israel, and an organization in New York called Renewal. They do encourage people to donate their kidneys. I'll tell you a fascinating fact. In America last year, most kidney transplants are not done from cadavers. They're done from living people, like a father to a son, or a son to a father, daughter to a mother, whatever it might be. But pure altruistic kidney donation, where a person donates to someone who they don't know, there's only 600 a year in America. Jews are 2% of the population, less than 2% of the population in America, yet they represent 33% of these donors. Orthodox Jews donate 200 altruistic, 200, right. But it's not completely altruistic, because who are they donating to? Other from Yidden. I'm not saying there's anything bad with it. I'm just saying it's not, when you think altruistic, you mean you show up to the hospital, say, take my kidney, give it to whoever matches the best. They're saying, take my kidney, give it only to another from Yid. So it's pretty impressive, and in Israel, Matnat Chaim has also done hundreds of these things. But Miriam, relying on people's generosity, relying on people's altruism, has never really solved any problem in the world. You have to incentivize people. And unfortunately, even though that they've been trying to encourage people to donate kidneys altruistically for years, 7,000 Americans die every year. 100 Israelis die every year. So we want to wait until this really takes off and let, if your father...
I think it would have to be promoted more. Like
it's promoted a lot. It's promoted a lot. But it doesn't solve the problem.
Why are they not on dialysis?
Who?
The ones that die. They are on dialysis.
They are. Oh, so people on dialysis, how long do you think you can live on dialysis for?
15 years?
No, so the average amount of lifespan on dialysis is unfortunately 7 years. That's the average. Some people in dialysis for 30 years, some people 2 years. Average time is 7 years, and you get an infection and you die.
Unless they get a new kidney.
Unless they get a new kidney. That's why people are so desperate for a new kidney. Yeah.
Correction.
Yeah.
What?
Hospitals.
You're saying that's what should be done, or you're afraid that might be done?
Instead of giving the government, so
You're suggesting that maybe we should allow the hospitals to buy kidneys?
Yeah. For example, yes. And then they earn from the operation, and it's also a market that's maybe a
Right. What do you think about the fact that the person who's donating their kidney is donating it because he's getting money? He's not doing it altruistically. His motives aren't pure. A lot of people think like the guy has to have pure motives. Did that cross anyone's mind here? And the people who are against it, it has to be done with pure motives? A pure mitzvah, tzrichas kavana? You're shaking your head, yes?
No,
So do you ever see do you ever see like a fireman running into a fire building to save a boy who's on the roof and the building is burning, and you stop the fireman and you say, wait a minute, are you a paid fireman or a volunteer fireman? Because if you're a paid fireman, your motives are impure, and I don't want you to risk your life and endanger yourself. Who has a greater risk of being hurt, a fireman running into a burning building or a person who donates their kidney? The fireman is a greater risk, but we don't stop the fireman.
I oppose your comparison.
Your opposition, your objection is noted. Is noted. We'll go down in the records, and we will bury it. We will bury it. Okay, so let me wrap up. Unless anyone else has anything burning to say. I'm surprised only Sarah was the one person. No one else moved. You're all lazy bums. No one moved. This conversation didn't move any of you. No one here has now even moved over besides Sarah. Says maybe I'm wrong. You're still so adamant that
thinking, you know.
What was that?
We want to think a bit.
See
texts and you know.
You have to one point, sorry, which I totally if the kidney goes within the family, like you said, a father to a son to a brother or whatever, then I'm on that other side. 100%.
For money?
No, money.
We're only talking about money. We're only talking about money.
That's why I said I wanted just for I have a clear opinion about that. If it's not because you mentioned it, if I totally forgot. If it's within the family, you helping a brother, whatever, 100% agree.
Right, but that's not our conversation. Our conversation is about money. Yes.
I'll freely admit that I probably should go over there, but there's still an unrational feeling that it just feels wrong.
Can you try to take a moment to close your eyes and take a deep breath and get in tune with your inner self and try to say what makes me. We'll play some music for you. Can we get a little humming from this section over here? And what makes you feel put off by it?
I think the criminality.
Money. Some people have an aversion to money in markets. They just think like money makes things. It taints things, and you know there was a big movement in America over 100 years ago where they wanted to stop life insurance. They just felt it was kind of disgusting to put an amount of money on someone's head and say that a workers' compensation. If you lose your arm, the accountants say it's worth $50,000. They just found it was noten tam lefgam. How do you say that? Anyone here halachically?
In the Torah already that if you are hurt in a piece, you have.
Yeah, the Gemara allows for, but I'm saying human beings have some kind of aversion. There's some kind of religious.
No, and not so like trust the government, which we all know is not so easy to you can say there's deregulation, but who knows, maybe the health insurance will put pressure on the government because it's cheaper that way. Like there's a trust issue in the system, even though ideally it might be right.
Mm-hmm. But you know today that it is, as a matter of fact, people go to Belarusia or whatever we call it in English, and it's an opportunity which is out there, and you have an opportunity to regulate it and to put it in a framework where people will be less harmed, that operations won't happen in some cellar in Bogota or wherever.
What's your name again?
Eitan.
So Eitan is saying reframe the question in your mind. The question is not whether we should allow it or not allow it. The question is, it's happening anyway. Is it better for us to regulate it or keep it in the black market? Once you keep it in the black, if you keep it in the black market, people get exploited, they don't get proper amount of money, they get infections in the surgery, it's done in back alleys, they don't have health insurance, they don't have health care. If you regulate it, they get a significant amount of money, they get out of poverty, they have long-term health care, you can select who. So he's saying, he's reframing it. I'm curious if anyone knows, and I honestly don't know, did the situation for prostitution, for sex trafficking, sex workers in Holland get better or worse when they legalized? In Switzerland it's legal?
Yeah.
So prostitution is legal in Switzerland?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just Holland.
It gets better.
It's better. So that's the argument here. So that's the argument here. So I would just say try to explore why that is. Why that is. Anyone think that maybe we shouldn't allow this because of the slippery slope argument? That once you allow people to sell their kidneys, maybe now they'll be kids will be kidnapped and they'll rip out the organs and they'll be selling them.
But that happens.
So first of all, first of all, that in what we're proposing, see that happens, and that can happen in the black market, but in the regulated market that can't happen. Because we want to know who the donor is. I mean, what do you think happens if someone just shows up to the hospital with a plastic bag? Like, remember when you were a kid and you brought home the goldfish? So you bring home like a plastic bag with water. You bring home like a plastic bag with like a kidney inside. You come to the hospital. Oh, I found this on the street. Could you please implant it? You know, in a regulated market that wouldn't happen. And in addition to which, the slippery slope argument I want to bring to your attention is not a moral argument. It's not a moral objection, it's a practical objection. You think that from a practical perspective, it might be moral, but if you allow it, it would allow for other worse things to happen. A slippery slope argument is not a moral argument, number one. And number two, I can't think of a better slippery slope than allowing for life insurance. There was a case in Israel a couple years ago where twin brothers, one of them got into debt, he was gambling, and so he went on the internet to find out how much money he would get and inherit from his parents being killed, and he slaughtered his parents in Jerusalem. He killed his parents to get their life insurance. He's now sitting in prison for the rest of his life. But life insurance is the best slippery slope argument because that's clear. You don't, right? Kidney is so difficult. You got to bring it to the hospital. They got to find out who's the donor. There's all tests to be done. But killing someone is very easy. So why don't we ban life insurance because of the slippery slope argument? We don't, because the slippery slope argument, first of all, is not a moral argument. And number two, society realizes that even though sometimes there can be abuse, that doesn't mean you should say we shouldn't be allowed to do it. Because in the big picture, society benefits from life insurance. When a woman's husband dies and she has 10 children, the fact that he had life insurance now supports them. So you do your best to minimize the slippery slope, but you don't say because of slippery slope we can't do anything. All right, let me wrap it up by just making a couple of points. All right, here we go. So we had two people that moved over here. Sarah moved to the undecided. Your heart, you want to go there, but your heartstrings are pulling you back here.
If it's regulated, I would move too.
But that's what we're suggesting. That's what we're suggesting. Regulations. Let's go. Let's go. All right.
Das Lied war's doch. If it's regulated.
By the way, tonight, after this lecture, we're all going out for drinks, but just this side, because these are the more fun people. You're the fuddy-duddies. You want a band. These guys are more fun, liberal.
I would like an explanation about the regulated situation.
If it's regulated, then I go back.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because I think the moral argument should say that you should be allowed to do it even if it's not regulated. I honestly think that. But for the sake of trying to get more buy-in, I'm saying regulated. Yeah.
What means if it's regulated? Explain.
That the government comes along and takes a poor person and says, look, this is your situation. Let me try. Well, you know what? Let me talk about in the wrap-up. I'll address that in the wrap-up. Okay, so I want to make a couple of comments in the wrap-up. First of all, according to halacha, most rabbis who are against selling organs are only against selling organs because they think maybe a person would not be given a significant amount of money for their organs. But if they were, they would allow it. Rav Ovadia Yosef says, if it's a mitzvah for a person to put on tefillin, and your son doesn't want to put on tefillin, and you say, I'll give you $100 if you put on tefillin every week, I'll give you $100, he said, there's nothing wrong with giving your kid $100.
Why is the price $100 and not $500?
Say it again?
Why is the price not
No,
$500?
I'm just making up the numbers here.
Me too.
I miss your point.
$100.
Yes.
Who is defining what is the price of making
the market? Whatever.
No, there's no market about that. Come on.
Whatever the kid is happy with. If he's happy for $100, then that's
right. If you offer a kid at $1, you say, I'm not putting on tefillin for $1. Okay. In any case, the point is that Rav Ovadia Yosef says that to give a person money to do a mitzvah is fine. And he says, Rav Ovadia Yosef, to give a person money to sell his kidney is fine. That's the opinion of Rav Ovadia Yosef. So halachically, you have a major halachic authority that says no noten tan lefgam, to give someone money to incentivize them to do a mitzvah. That's first. Second, What was the one country in the world today that's allowed to sell your kidney? I didn't want to tell you because I thought if I told this side's going to jump up and cheer when I say the one country that allows you to sell your kidneys is Iran. They're like, oh yeah, Iran, see how evil it is. I happen to think that Iran has got it right on this issue. That Iran is the moral beacon of light on this issue. No one in Iran has died of kidney failure since 1988. You need a kidney. There are stats. A friend of mine who's has a PhD went to Iran about 5 years ago, and she wrote a book, and she went to all the kidney transplant centers, and she spoke about their program. They have a beautiful program. You come to their center, and they don't take your kidney. They say, you're poor, you want to sell your kidney because you're poor. They bring in a social worker, and they say, let's see if we can work helping you find a job to get you out of poverty. They try to help I'm sorry?
You can't rely on their statistics.
Right, that's why she went to Iran herself and spoke with people, did the best research that she could. Let me
people before.
What was that?
They hang the people before they die of kidney.
Right. Okay, so their program is
how many people stupid?
Their program is to try to get people out of poverty before they let them sell their kidney, and only when they see, for whatever reasons there are, that the person can't do it, they don't. Then they allow them to sell their kidney. How much money do they give them for their kidney? They give them the half a year's salary that a nurse makes. That's the amount of money that they give them, and that's enough to help them get out of poverty or whatever it is that they do. It's worth it for them, and that's what they do. That's the going rate in Iran.
Is there a statistic that they get out of poverty?
I don't know. I don't know about the follow-up. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I will tell you that the Philippines had a great program where you could buy a kidney in the Philippines. In 2009, Dr. Frank Delmonico, who is a physician from Harvard, who is a great activist against allowing people to sell their kidneys, he went to the Philippines and he spoke with the transplant community there, and he said, if you do not stop your program of paying poor people, in the Philippines there's 100 million people, 10 million live in severe poverty, some die of starvation. It's very bad in the Philippines. That's why you have so many Filipinos going abroad, working as maids or nurses in Israel and sending money back to the Philippines. So he said to them, if you don't stop your program, we're going to go to the UN and maybe get sanctions against you. And he put pressure on them, and they stopped the program. So I got on a plane, and I flew to the Philippines, I flew to Manila, and I sat down and had a conversation with the head of transplant there. And he was a fascinating conversation. And what was ironic about it was that the waiter who overheard the conversation was on dialysis. I'll get back to the waiter in a second. So the guy told me, he was the head of transplant, he said they had a wonderful program in the Philippines. Someone came to the Philippines, they wouldn't even give him money. You know what they would give him? They would say, look, you're a poor person, you're coming to us because you're poor. And he said, what could we do to get you out of poverty that wouldn't involve money? So one guy, he told me, he said he wanted a good used motorcycle so he could open up a taxi business. They gave him a good used motorcycle, he gave his kidney, saved someone's life, and this poor person got out of poverty and now can make a parnassa for him and his family. Another guy said, all I need is a stinking small rowboat. I just need a rowboat to get my net, my fishing net, further away from shore where the big fish are to get more fish. He gave his kidney, they gave him a rowboat, he now makes a parnassa for him and his family. If they couldn't figure out something that he needed, they would give them money. But no one died in the Philippines. When I went to meet with him in Manila, he told me ever since that law was passed, that now they don't let poor people sell their kidney, 10,000 Filipinos die every year that didn't die before. Why did they die? The waiter said, he's on dialysis. I said to him, how many times are you dialyzed? 3 times a week, 4? He said, no, the government can't afford to dialyze us more than twice a week. You need to go on dialysis at least 3 times a week. So the average amount of lifespan on dialysis in the Philippines is 2 years, and then they die. 2 years. So I ask you, even if this group here, and this is a question I put forth to you, even if you think it's immoral for the issues that we raised here, what do you think is better? What's the lesser of 2 evils? We should prohibit it, like they prohibited in the Philippines, and let 10,000 people die, or allow it and save 10,000 people's lives? What do you think?
Yeah.
But the organs stay in the country.
It's still exploitation. Why not give the guy a boat so that he can get his
They
bonus.
don't. Why did you give them a boat? You don't, and the government doesn't.
I would give him a boat.
But they don't. There's not enough money, so they don't. So you're saying it's better to let 10,000 people die.
No, you're putting words in my
Those are the
mouth.
options. What are the other options? To try to wave the flag of altruism and say more people should donate kidneys altruistically and do that for another how many years? While 10,000 people die every year?
Then you have to look that people can go to dialysis for 3 times a week and to put these possibilities until you have other ways.
The government doesn't have money to dialysis, so what do you want them to do?
Stay in the same country.
Well, they had the people were going to the Philippines to buy the kidneys for themselves as well, outside of the Philippines.
That's another story.
Israelis were going to the Philippines to do it. The whole reason why it became illegal in America in 1984 was because there was a stupid doctor, I forget his name, that as soon as cyclosporin came out, which allowed people to accept kidneys and not reject kidneys, he said, I'm going to now start a business where I'm going to import Africans to America and buy their kidneys from poor Africans and send them back. So this whole racism thing came out, and then they went crazy, and Al Gore, who was a senator at the time, he quickly passed this law that said anyone, it's called the National Organ Transplant Act, NOTA, of 1984, said anyone who buys, sells, or brokers kidney will be fined by 5 years in prison and a $50,000 fine. He says, if you read the congressional testimonies, Al Gore says, but this is just a stopgap measure. We're hoping we're going to rely on altruism. We're going to try to encourage people to donate organs altruistically, right? And if we don't succeed, he said, we need to revisit this prohibition. And I contacted his chief of staff about 5 years ago, and I said, now that 30 years has passed since NOTA, I said, will you now revisit the issue? He said he doesn't want to deal with it. He's out of politics, doesn't want to deal with it. I want to leave you off with one story, and this is a true story. You can look it up in the newspaper. I think it happened in the early 1990s. There was a man in Afghanistan whose daughter had a rare blood disease, a rare blood cancer. They did not have the cure for that cancer, the treatment for that cancer, which was treatable in Afghanistan. He flew her to, he saved up all his money, took all his money, raised money from friends, and they flew to England where they had a cure for it. But they didn't have any health insurance, and they had no connections, couldn't raise the money. So they found a gentleman who was on dialysis, a wealthy man, and the guy said, okay, you have a need and I have a need. This is where markets meet. Let's see if we can somehow meet each other's needs. So he said, okay, I'll pay for your daughter's cancer treatment for her leukemia, and you donate your kidney to me. And they had an agreement, and they did it. And they didn't think there was anything wrong with it. So when they went to the hospital, they told everyone what they were doing, and they said, no, that's illegal. And what happened as a result? The man died on dialysis, and the girl's daughter died of cancer of the blood.
Why is that any different than a kidney chain?
What do you mean? A kidney chain is when I donate a kidney to you when you donate a kidney here. Yeah. Here, he was paying money. He was paying money, right? Because all of a sudden, money, all of a sudden, money just pulls the people's heart. There's something untastely, unseemly about money. I'm a Jew from New York. We like money. So that's the end of the discussion. I hope I hope I brought some of these issues to the forefront of your mind. I hope you think about it. The reason why I'm so passionate about this issue is because people are dying needlessly. Someone had mentioned, I think, about what about paying money for cadavers? All these issues about exploitation, about medical risk. If a person's dead, if a person's brain dead, and the family's not sure if they want to donate the organs, they say, no, we don't want to donate. We say, hey, we'll give you $50,000 if you donate. Some families would say yes. Why not at least offer people who are dead, offer the families of people who are dead, offer them money? I think that's an opportunity. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the debate, and until next time.
Why don't you offer your kidney?
I would love to sell my kidney, but unfortunately I've had kidney stones. I wanted to sell my kidney to this guy for $1 million. I would do it. And I'm not poor, I'm not under pressure, I know all the risks, I'm educated about the issue, and I wanted to sell my kidney, but I have kidney stones, so I'm not a potential kidney donor.
Are you out with kidney stones?
Am I out?
I didn't know. So if you have kidney stones, you can't.
Yeah, it can't be. If you had one, they might take you. I've had multiple, and I've had it in both kidneys, so they won't take it.
I didn't know.
It's a wonderful experience. I wish it upon you.
I had it.
You had it.
I just want to say thank you to Robby for coming for the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for putting it together, Sarah.
It was great, very, very interesting, and I know it gave me a lot of things to think about, although I already find the issue very something that is really important to me, and I've already considered a lot. Hopefully everyone else has also. Oh, Yes. Okay.
Before the food, can everyone stand up over here and move to there? I want to take a picture of the whole group.
No, they should come over.
They should come over here. That's right. It's a smaller group, so I think it'll be easier.